Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome all you cool ghouls and friendly fiends. It's the House of the Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pavlansky, coming to you from an undisclosed location. Unfortunately, I cannot be with the group today. I'm going to turn it over to my good buddy, Eddie Guevara, for the introductions and the setup for what's going to turn out to be a great topic of discussion today. So, Eddie, take it away.
How are you guys? How's everybody out there today?
All right, pretty good.
Hello.
And Richard Hilliard, our special guest.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Yeah.
Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Yeah, Richard, the last time we had you on, it was a pretty interesting show. So let's just start really quick with Chuck, Cheri. Everything pretty cool your way?
Yeah, really, really good. We're doing some, if you want to call it spring cleaning, huh, Cheri?
Oh, boy.
You wouldn't believe all the stuff.
Many springs ago.
Yeah, many springs. Oh, man. So much junk we're clearing out of the house. Tomorrow we're going to the Pittsburgh IBM convention.
We're so excited. Yeah, we're going to stay till Sunday.
Yeah, downtown Pittsburgh for the International Brotherhood of Magicians. It should be interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I should bump into quite a few friends of mine and so forth.
Magic all day and all night.
Magic all day and all night, man.
Woo-hoo!
And I'm gonna bring a few things to show my friends, and so it should be a lot of fun.
Does anybody disappear on the set?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Well, there's a bunch of stage shows, bunch of competitions, and there's a restaurant in the hotel itself, and so we're looking forward to it, and it should be a lot of fun. Downtown Pittsburgh, there's a lot of restaurants maybe we'll go to for breakfast or so forth, and so and it's only maybe 15 minutes away from us, but we're going to stay at the hotel, so that's kind of cool.
All right, one quick question I want to ask. Do they have like a seller's room there where they sell masks?
Yes, absolutely. We will take a video for you, Eddie. And
the dealer's room, which I hope it's not as crowded as when the Monster Bash was.
Yeah, when we went to Monster Bash, it was kind of crowded, but the other magic convention. Back in late January was like shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't
was really bad.
Yeah, you couldn't even see. You had to literally stand on your tippy toes, lean sideways. They just oversold it. I hope they didn't do it.
I hope they didn't, yeah.
That is interesting. Well, one thing that you got to remember, if you find the robot plants, you bring them over to me.
Yeah, definitely, man.
We're always looking, Eddie. We're always looking.
Yeah.
So, Richard.
Yes.
Tell us a little rundown what's going on in your neck of the woods and what's new with the monsters and stuff you're doing.
Well, I teach. I'm a professor, and I'm finally out of summer classes, so I'm spending the summer, the rest of the summer, till we gear up at the end of August to. I've got a show in Newark Airport Marriott.
Ooh.
It's the hotel that's right in the airport complex. In September, it's called Jersey Fest, and it's all for monster and science fiction modelers and collectors. And I do a big art display, and it's been an incredible show for me in the past. Now, this is the first one since COVID. So the last show was 2019.
Oh, wow.
That's where I met Greg Nicotero, and I started working on Creep Show. So it's been a really good show for me, and lots of fans. I had a guy, it was Sunday. The show was winding down in 2019, and this guy comes in. He's just beaded with sweat, and he's just all disheveled. And he's like, "I'm looking for Rich Hilliard." And I'm like, "Hey, that's me." He said, "Do you have any more of those Abbott and Costello Meet Frankensteins left?" And I said,
"Yeah,
I have one that I'm holding for someone, but I think they're going to want me to mail order. So let me go talk to him." And he said, "Oh, yeah, sure. Sell it to that guy." Because he drove all the way from Long Island. He got caught in bumper to bumper traffic.
Oh, my.
And I think it took him over 3 hours to get to the show.
Oh, wow. God bless.
So there was no way he was going home empty-handed. There's no way.
When you said sweaty and
disheveled.
Disheveled, I thought you were talking about me, Richard.
I don't know if you could see him right now.
But I know setting in traffic on the LIE is no fun. I did that a couple of times. I drove out to St. James. I collect. Oh my God, I collect so much stuff right now. Another summer project. While I'm doing all this framing and stuff, we're converting our basement into Barbie land. My wife is
Ooh.
an enormous Barbie collector.
Oh, wow.
She's got thousands of pieces,
Oh, that's neat.
and we've redone the basement, and now we're getting ready to set up Barbie land.
Oh, that's nice. Hey, you know what? Getting back to the monsters, Richard, one of the icons in that field actually lived here in Pittsburgh. And he filmed the Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, sure.
Up north. You know what? We'd like to visit that cemetery sometime. It is on our bucket list, and we'd like to shoot a little video. George Romero.
Yes.
And when he passed away a few years ago, the Monroeville Mall had like a little stand set up, and like people were throwing flowers in there and so forth. Like they had a picture of him and so
Wow.
forth, because you know when he filmed Dawn of the Dead. But I think he was in collaboration with Stephen King for Creepshow, right?
Correct. Yes, the
Okay.
original Creepshow, which came out in 1982,
82.
was directed by Romero. It was written. All the episodes the segments were written by Stephen King.
Yeah.
And then Tom Savini did all the makeup effects.
Okay. I love that. You know what? The first one was so cool. I kind of like.
Oh yeah.
I like that one the best. You know what I mean? It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And yeah, I think the zombie craze actually started right here in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
You know,
they had a big show. They had a big show at the Monroeville Mall last summer. I wanted to go, but I found out about it late, and there was just no way I could get everything together to do a show. Because I mean, one of my things that I do myself is that I always try and make a good display, and if the display's not going to be impressive, then I'm not going to go. And
you don't want to
have it nice.
you don't want to rush it, Richard.
No, and I want to keep my brand as somebody who's professional, who and presents their work professionally.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. But that was a cool movie. You know, that's what started it. I guess Night of the Living Dead, and the guy that played the newscaster, I actually worked with him a couple times.
Chili Billy.
Yeah, Chili Billy. He actually sent me, quite a bit of different types of memorabilia, and we visited. He's in a mausoleum just outside of the city limits of Pittsburgh, and we did a little video there, and I showed a lot of the things he sent me from Chiller Theater. That was on, I think, from 1962 to 1984, if I'm not mistaken, out here in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And so he sent me like it's the last script, the actual script of Chiller Theater, and he signed it and so forth. And he sent me the DVD and everything. It's on a little video. If you search under my wife, Cheri Caputo, Cheri, on YouTube, you can see that video. It's only about maybe 2 months old. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
I'll check it out. I really will. That's awesome.
Good, definitely.
We'd like to go to graveyards and do different videos sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, we did the Riddler.
Yeah, we did the Riddler.
Frank Gorshin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he's from Pittsburgh. And where was his grave, honey? I don't remember. Was that North Side or?
I can't remember exactly. You wouldn't believe, Richard, the amount of people that are from Pittsburgh, that are minor or major stars, it's just
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
Yes. Yeah. One of my nurse co-workers, she had went to high school with him.
Wow.
Yeah. Back when he was Michael Douglas, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a really funny story. Is that he changed his name to Keaton because there was already a Michael Douglas who was acting, and pretty funny that he changed his name.
Yeah.
And then another quick aside is, of course, I guess Michael Douglas has been Michael Douglas his entire life, but his father, Kirk Douglas, his real name was Ishur Danielovich. He was Russian immigrant, fled communism.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Really.
He lived to be 102, I think, wasn't it? Somewhere around it.
Unreal. Yeah, and survived a terrible helicopter crash.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, some pretty interesting stuff there. I love all that trivia.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk a minute to Eddie about, after we had the first time I was graced with being able to be on the podcast, I started really thinking about premiums, which I know is that's your that's your whole bag of wax or ball of wax, isn't it, Eddie?
Well, it's actually mail order items from
Yeah.
comic books.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
I call those premiums, but I guess that's more like a cereal premium would be something in the bottom of the box.
yeah,
But
something that I bought a lot of.
yeah. But I mean, I was going through some of my stuff, and the earliest thing I have that I still have in my collection all these years was the very first thing I ordered from Famous Monsters, which was the oh golly, it's the all the themes from classic horror movies. It's the one I forgot the name of the orchestra. I don't think it's Neil Norman, but it's something like that. But it's like Creature from Black Lagoon theme and Horror of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, all that stuff on vinyl, and it still plays. It's a little scratchy, but it still plays. And I've had that for golly, well over 55 years.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I have Phantom of the Harpsichord, I think it was. Remember, it looks
Yes.
like the Phantom of the Opera.
Yep.
I have that, and one of the things that I also have is Monsters Talk. You know that?
Yes, I have that as well. But I bought that in a store, which is kind of interesting. I was in I was somewhere with my mother. I was a little bit older at that point, so I was probably 10 or in the 10, 11, 12 zone. And we were in a store and they had records and they had that, and I'd always wanted it. And what's funny is I find that record very disappointing.
It is. I don't like it.
The cover is fabulous. I mean, I actually have that record in a frame hanging in our living room, but I'm never going to take the record out of the frame and play it. I just like the cover art.
Yeah, you know what, Richard? To be honest with you, one day, this was years ago, in the Meadowlands flea market. And when I'm saying years, it's probably at the end of the 1990s, early. I don't even think it got to 2000 yet. It was like 1997, 98. Some guy went to the Meadowlands flea market and he was selling records for $1 a piece. He actually had over 15, 20 different horror records from the 70s.
Wow.
And I was able to buy, the one that the Famous Monster used to advertise. There were like 4 different covers, and it was like one of them had 6 fingers of the Frankenstein monster, or the Frankenstein's hand, I think it was called. And then there was one with Frankenstein's face on it. I almost bought every single one of them. So I think I really have every horror record made in the 70s.
Wow.
I don't know of any that I don't really have.
Right.
I have over probably 200 different records. Now, my favorite that I do have over probably 25, 30 off is the Sounds of the Haunted House by Walt Disney with the orange cover.
Yes, the orange cover and the haunted
Yeah.
house, the
Yeah.
blue and purples. Yeah, I have that.
I also have that same edition, but the British, I got 2 of the British versions, and that's really nice because it has the actual haunted house from New Orleans Square in California on the cover. It's black on. I mean, it's a really decent cover. It shows the actual haunted house. It's dark. I think that, I don't know if you ever looked at that cover, Richard, but it's really phenomenal.
I've not
what year
seen
did
it.
that
I'll have to check that out.
Oh yeah, that was released over in Europe at the time. But the thing with that record that was funny is I bought that record in the old 2 Guys in Hackensack when I was a kid for I think $1.50, whatever it was. And I was petrified to listen to that record. It took me a couple of weeks to actually put it on. And that was kind of sad because it got me scared of the Gale House record from
I love
company.
I love the Gale House one. That is so cool.
Right. But I never ordered it as a kid. And then also the horror record from Johnson Smith, I never did. I wound up paying a lot of money for those to have it in my time. Now, Chuck, as you could see, we had I think Mr. Richard dropped off a second. I'm sure he'll come back on. And
he did disappear. I don't see him on here. Now you mentioned the Gale House, which I have that one up, the Haunting, and now that preceded the Johnson Smith one. Am I correct in saying that? First Gale House came out, then Johnson Smith put together the record. Is that right?
That's a good question, Chuck. I believe the Johnson Smith might be maybe a month or 2 older than that, but the Gale House record goes down to 1970.
Have any of you all seen the Johnson Smith record with the Erie Publications animation overlaid on it. It's on. It's.
Oh.
I don't think it's on YouTube, but it's
No,
on.
no, no. It is. It is on YouTube, Richard. That's done by Jason
Willis.
Yes.
Willis.
Yes, Jason Willis is a phenomenal person, super nice. And to say the truth here, the only reason I actually got to, and this is crazy for me being a collector, as big as I am, I didn't get to hear the Gale House record until Jason Willis several years ago, probably, I don't know, in 2000, he started Scar Stuff, and he started posting all those records there. And then I was able to, believe it or not, obtain an actual record about a month or two later on eBay, and now I have 6 of them actually.
Of course you do.
Because I love the record, but Richard, though, like I said, it took me. I was petrified as a kid, and then of course the 80s came around. I got married. I was old now.
It gets crowded out.
It got crowded out. But one thing I'm going to tell you about those records is the records themselves. Okay, one of the things about those records is that the horror record, the Johnson Smith one that used to be sent out with the 7-foot ghost.
Yep.
That Johnson Smith record, one of the guys that was on that record, believe it or not, was Craig Tarbeck, the vice president of Johnson Smith.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Or the president. Now, Craig Tarbeck, one of the things that was funny about it is I was actually going to have him in today's show. One of the things about Craig that I thought was funny is that we but one of our guys, Jason Blakely, who's been helping a lot with the website and everything, found an old 1980s film. And the 1980s film was I guess from Michigan, some news station was trying to go to the Johnson Smith, write a story about Johnson Smith, and said, we're going to write, and says, this is a letter we got from a Craig Tarbeck. And it's actually, if you go to the website, to the House of the Unusual website, you'll see it on there. And the record, not the record, but the actual video was pretty cool and fun.
That was a neat video. You know what? You really gotta check this out. You'll love it, Richard.
I am going to do that.
Yeah.
The record that freaked me out as a kid was Alfred Hitchcock's Ghost Stories for Young People.
Oh
yeah.
That record, the one with the squirrels that keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
That freaked me out. The one with I guess is it a Roald Dahl story where it's like the hunters, they come back from the dead, or maybe they don't. It depends on how you interpret the story. But those things, oh my God, they scared me to death.
Yeah.
And when I was very small, and my mother bought this stuff for me really young. I think I mentioned in the last time I joined you all that my mom took me to see Psycho when I was 4 years old.
Oh, that's right.
So I mean, as long as there was no sexuality in the movies, everything was just peachy with my mom. I mean,
a little bit of murder doesn't matter, but
oh my gosh,
no sex.
I think it's the premature burial where a man is trampled to death by a horse. And growing up on a farm, that freaked me out. I can tell you. And the whole family, they're sitting there, we're eating popcorn. This guy's trampled to death by a horse. No big deal. But that was, So anyway, my mom had this record player, and it was one of those old like portables that was like a piece of luggage.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those.
I had one.
Yeah, Cheri
that thing, I believed, when I was a child, I believed that record player was haunted because one night we came home and it was playing the Alfred Hitchcock album by itself.
Ooh, that is freaky.
Nobody was in the house, and I never listened to that record. It was probably a decade or more before I ever listened to that record again.
Wow.
Which is just crazy. We came home. I don't know where we'd gone, but no one had been in the house, and we came home, and that record player was playing. It was playing the Alfred Hitchcock record.
That is weird. Wow.
Very weird. Very weird. But I will say this: it was in the same room that my mother kept. I may have, I tell so many stories so many times, and sometimes they get lost who I told them to. But my mom was very active in in church. And back in the 70s, after the success of The Exorcist and all that, the whole thing of the devil and devil worship and all that stuff became really big front page news and editorials and things like that. And my mother did a big presentation for, I guess, her women's auxiliary group or whatever. And she dove into it in a way that was, I don't know. It was something, because she had this trunk, and this was in the same room that the haunted record player was in, that she had all of her Satanist stuff that she used for research. And she had a satanic Bible. She had a Ouija board. She had all these articles on Anton LaVey and all this stuff. And I wouldn't even pass in front of that trunk.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep that stuff in the house.
No, I would avoid walking by that trunk if I could. And it's funny because I guess that I'm a little older, and I remember the cultural impact that The Exorcist had.
Oh, absolutely.
That wasn't one I was allowed to see.
Yeah,
and
I tell you what, Richard, that's the movie that scared the crap out of me. I was 9, going on 10 years old, I believe, when I came out, and my brother's 7 years older than me, and he took me on a bus downtown Pittsburgh to see it, because back in those days there was only a handful of movie theaters.
And how old were you?
I was about 9 years old, I believe. And,
yikes!
Yeah, you know what? Like, they didn't even want kids to come in and see that unless you're with an older person.
Right.
He was 16, but he looked like 18, I guess. He had a mustache and everything. But
I was 11 when Exorcist came out, and the TV ads scared me so badly that I slept with one of those little green New Testaments. I slept with that under my pillow for
long. You know what? I couldn't sleep for several days, Richard. I put the big light on, and then
Linda Blair was our age, and it was it was like, well, if this can happen to her, it can happen to you.
Oh, exactly. And then my parents, I would climb in their bed. I was 9 years old in their bed, and they would wake up to smoke a cigarette. Everybody smoked back then. And then when they'd put the cigarette out and start dozing off, I'd say, wake up. My dad said, get out of here. I got to go to work in the morning.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious. Oh man.
But people, my wife and I, we had a long talk a few years ago about me arguing with people on the internet. You know how easy that is to do, right?
Oh, it's very easy.
We all know how easy that is to do. And I try not to do it, but I know that someone had made a remark on one of the forums or something like that they didn't understand how anybody could be scared by The Exorcist or Psycho or any of that stuff because it was all so cheesy. And I didn't get angry by it, but I was like, listen, you weren't there. Let me tell you about this.
Yeah, okay? Right.
That shit, no one had ever seen anything like that before.
No. And
it freaked people out. I mean, I was not, when I saw Psycho, it was a re-release. So Psycho came out in 1960, so I wasn't around yet. But my local theater used to show all kinds of stuff on Saturday afternoons, and that's how I got to see it at the tender age of 4. But the response from the audience in movies like that that tells the true tale. It's like it
tells the truth. Yeah.
I mean, a similar but different is
I was going to tell you,
Star Wars. I was telling kids that, the original film played, I think it was in a theater in Washington or Oregon, played continually for almost 2 years because there was no video, there was no streaming.
No.
And if a movie was popular, it stayed in the theaters. And those films had impact that
Craig, what'd you say?
I guess it's diminished over time. But for those of us that were there, we felt it.
You can come in. If not, don't worry about it.
Eddie.
I'll call you a bit.
Eddie,
I'm here.
Eddie, I think you're on here. We can hear you, buddy.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we were listening to you.
Yeah, I was working. You were listening to me before?
We heard you on the phone.
Yeah, we could hear you on the phone.
Yeah, I was trying to get on the famous Craig Tarbeck. I wanted him to get on.
Oh.
So it would be phenomenal to hear from his part.
Oh yeah. You know, Richard, the one thing I miss back in high school, it seems like we're pretty close to the same age. Way back when I was in high school many, many years ago, they had a few Stooge fests. And that was cool. I mean, we would go like on a Saturday morning, me and a few friends bars, and we'd watch matinees, all three Stooge movies. It was so cool. I kind of wish they would bring those back. I would go in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, I would love stuff like that. But I've gone to a couple of, I guess, revivals, and it's kind of sad how poorly they're attended. I went to see I guess I think they call it Fathom Events.
Yeah.
Did a I guess this was in 2013. They did the anniversary of The Exorcist, and there were 4 people in the theater.
Oh, isn't that a shame? Yeah.
Yeah. I told my classes to come. Nobody showed up. They're all a bunch of wimps. But and it was like me and like a family, and that was it. The theater was completely empty.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think people kind of appreciate stuff like that. I don't know why, but they don't. That's why, you know what? Joe Pavlansky goes to Monster Bash, and so we did go last October. And you know what? Like on a Saturday morning, they play. They play old time cartoons that we grew up with. They show old commercials. I mean,
very fun.
Yeah, they give you a little box of cereal, so you're munching on some Fruit Loops while you're watching these things. It's just so cool, I don't know. I guess a lot of people don't have that feeling, but we kind of like the nostalgic stuff.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, Scooby-Doo they play. It was cool, man. I like Scooby-Doo. Where Are You from '68 to '70. Those were the cool ones.
My wife's a huge Scooby-Doo fan. We just got I don't know. She found the Scooby-Doo. It's like a newer show that we ran into that yesterday in the store, and of course bought it the minute we saw it. It's Scooby-Doo and Guess Who? I don't know if you've seen that.
I think I do remember that. Yeah.
And that's pretty new. I think it came out just like 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And it's kind of like a reboot of the old Scooby-Doo movies where they have guest stars.
Right.
And like there's one with Batman and oh golly, I think like Weird Al and stuff like that. So they're still keeping that franchise alive, I think, for the most part, pretty well. I know the Velma show, which I haven't seen. I know that was controversial, but
yeah. I think I think the newer Scooby-Doos, they're even drawn differently. Like they're shadowed. You know what they draw certain features on them. It's it's not the stuff we grew up with the one-dimensional. So they're kind of put a new twist into it. I kind of like the old way better, to be honest.
Oh yeah, well it definitely has a flavor. I mean, it's like when I was a kid, I wasn't that enamored with the old Spider-Man TV animated show because they didn't draw all the webs on his costume.
Johnson Smith, vice president, legend himself. We're talking about the Johnson Smith horror record. What can you tell us about the one from Johnson Smith, Craig?
Well, if it's the one I'm thinking of, Eddie, yes. I actually did the scream that blew your eardrum.
Richard, you're familiar with Johnson Smith Company, correct?
Oh yes.
Okay, that's here's the guy that put out the 7-foot ghost and all that stuff together
cool.
with tell us a little rundown, Craig.
I joined the company in 1970, and my job was to put the catalog together and find the products for it.
But what was the greatest item that sold in the 70s?
Well, I would say it was the mystery top. Do you remember that mystery top?
That is correct.
Yeah,
it went on forever, supposedly, with a battery operated, but it actually didn't go on forever. But yeah, that's all. Now, one thing I want to ask Craig, because what happened here, and the reason I kind of got you on is because Richard, the last time he was on, he did a phenomenal job. And Richard, tell him a little bit about yourself.
My name is Richard Hilliard. Please call me Rich. I'm an illustrator and author, and I also teach. Professor at James Madison University, where I teach illustration and graphic design, and I do movie posters and collectible Blu-ray packaging for different clients, and I specialize in horror cinema.
House record might have come a little bit after you guys. That's the one that always used to advertise a ghoul. But the thing was that this was also a year, not 71, but in 73, Honeycomb, Post Honeycomb, started putting record albums in back of the cereal boxes.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yep. Okay,
and I actually have all of them, but I have, and this is crazy, I was able to acquire an original box, uncut, unused, and I was able to get an original box for one of those haunted house records from the 1970s.
Wow.
Now, Craig, you could probably say a little bit more about this. When you sold the record, I know it was 95 cents and the ghost was 95 cents. Did you ever sell it as a pair? I mean, you actually did, because there's a ghost ad where the ghost is really tall. I mean, like really tall and long. It's one of the earlier ads from the Johnson Smith Ghost before the more famous one did. Did you ever do well selling the combo for $2?
I can't really remember. I don't even remember the combination that you mentioned. But it's a good idea.
Well, Craig, you know what it is? Like I've told a lot of people, I've had Lou Weiss, I've had you, and you know, as I mentioned before, Richard, back in, I guess, I don't know, 1984, 83, when I got married, in 84, actually, I started the idea of starting a mail order company. So back then, I went over and drove all the way over to, because I thought it would be better since there's no computers or anything that I could use other than the Tandy 100 or 1000, I think that was around, which was impossible. You didn't any machines. I decided to try to see if it was possible to drive down to Honor House in Lynbrook, New York. So I drove down there to try to meet with Edwin Wagman, which was the Honor House president. And apparently, you know, I didn't meet, I got there and he told me, write me a letter, and, you know, the rest is history. But along the lines, I was able to get a hold of the original Lou Weiss, which owned the Fun Factory. And it was easier getting a hold of him. And when I got a hold of him, I also started calling at the time to see how to make the ghost. I called Craig Tarbeck. Now, Craig, you picked up the phone and you turned it over to Dominic, and Dominic gave me a whole rundown of where the ghost was made and stuff. And then you had some regrets, whatever the reason. You said you even faxed me, which I still have that original fax, the copy of the front page of the instruction sheets that you went and found. And then you said, I'm going to send you in the mail the rest of the thing. I waited and waited. A week later, I called you, and I guess you had second thoughts about giving me too much information about it. And you kind of said to me, well, I think I'll just keep the instructions. I think I already sent you the front part, and broke my heart at the time.
Was that 84?
That was 84, Craig.
Oh, and my goodness.
I still have that original thing. Then I tried getting a hold of you again. I sent you a bottle of wine, which was about a year later. And I called you, said, you got it? You said, yeah, not much mine. Couldn't get through to you. And then finally, when I told you about Lou Weiss, that's where the story began, because you had, at one time, Lou Weiss had tried to hire you to move over. You remember that part?
Yeah, I just wondered, do you want me to send you back that bottle of wine, Eddie?
hey, why don't you send it to me, Craig? I'll take it.
Recently, you came across, and I wanted to ask you your information about that. I told you about the famous movie that was done, a 1984 video clip that's actually on the website right now, of the Johnson Smith Company, when there was a news station in Michigan that was trying to get a hold, and supposedly they received a letter from you. But wait, before you say anything about that letter or anything, what I was going to say is that after I mentioned to you about Lou Weiss and stuff, then I said, I really got to meet this legend, man. I've been trying to talk to him. He's been a little close with me. Doesn't give me too much info. And I drove 359 miles to have lunch with you.
Oh, my.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you remember that day?
Oh, I remember when, you drove up for lunch.
Yeah, and that's when, you know, Craig, we really were different then. We became friends. You know, Craig, one of the things I wanted to ask you, what was your input when I told you to watch that movie about that lady that claimed you sent the letter to her?
You mean the little video from like a news station?
Yeah.
I don't remember it at all, to be honest with you.
Was that letter sent by you, as you said, or you said it could have been sent by somebody else?
I didn't really read it yet, but it looked like it was signed by me, but it looked like it was my handwriting. Letter say, do you remember?
Apparently the lady, which Richard, you got to see the video, is phenomenal. The lady says that they sent you a letter, and in the video it's saying that she wants to get a tour of the Johnson Smith something, and you told her basically, no, you can't.
Yeah,
And
I
she
think
went
somebody,
inside the door.
yeah, that would have been the company line, and I think somebody else must have sent that letter, forged my name, and but it's what I would have probably been told to do anyway. So
Yeah, that Johnson Smith didn't really allow people in there, did they?
no, well, you know, we were a mail order company, and if people started coming there, we wouldn't have the ability or the time to handle walk-in business.
Right.
Yeah. What was the average? Do you remember what was the average yearly make of in a ballpark of what Johnson Smith did back in the 70s? Or
You
was
mean
it?
a gross sales?
Yeah, and gross sale. Do you remember what it did in the 70s as compared to the early 80s?
Yeah, well, in the early 70s, I think when I joined the company, it was less than $500,000, and
Really?
but we steadily grew that over the next decade or so.
Really? That's surprising. How many employees were there when you joined in the 70s?
Just a handful of employees. Basically, Paul Smith, the owner of the company, the son of Alfred Johnson Smith, Mr. Paul, in his mid 50s at the time, and basically he wanted to really retire. He didn't need any more money, and so he hired somebody to sort of manage the company, and then that person hired me. Um, Mr. Smith basically phased himself out, and the two of us who were left decided to grow the company.
Oh,
Right. Now, you remember you mentioned one time the story of the 1939 1929 Johnson Smith catalog that was the largest the company ever had. Can you recap a little bit on that story? Why was that catalog so popular?
Yeah, that was 700-800 pages. Alfred Johnson Smith had come to the U.S. in 1914 and went to Chicago because Chicago was the home of mail order universe, basically, with Ward's and Sears and their big catalog. So he decided to sell novelties, and over the years built his catalog up. 1929 might have been the largest it ever got, was 700-800 pages. I mean, he would write 2 pages of copy on a 10-cent item, and so in 1929 he put out this catalog, 700-800 pages worth, hardback basically, and that was just about the time of the Big Depression, and the catalog was mailed out, and it did not produce sales because of the Depression. Therefore, he could not pay his print for I don't know how many tens of thousands of copies he had bought or had printed, but he couldn't pay the printer. So, and subsequently, he had declared bankruptcy. But he told the printer, "I'm going to pay you back, not 10%, which he would have been legally required to do, but he said, I'm going to pay you back." And slowly, he managed to get some sales going. But the printer, which was in Wisconsin, said, "Look, if you owe us all this money, we want to watch over you. So we want you to move the company here to Wisconsin so we can have some of our financial people watching what you do." So he moved to Racine and did the mail order business there for some years. and gradually paid off the printer 100% of what he owed him, and then moved back to the Detroit area. He moved back to the Detroit area in the mid 30s after he paid the printer. I came up 35 years later, and when I used to go to trade shows looking for new items, I would run into these companies, these importers of novelties, who were our vendors, and they would all tell me how much they respected Johnson Smith Company because they too had been paid off 100% some years earlier, and so that catalog was quite a story.
You know, one of the greatest stories too was that I still go, oh man, when you went to meet with me the first time we met, if you remember, I believe you had gone you were still in the Johnson Smith. I mean, Johnson Smith obviously was still around, and you had gone up to the attic. Was it that you were looking for the original artwork for the 7-foot ghost to give me? That you ripped your pants? You
me a pair of pants rather than a bottle of wine.
Yeah, I should have. No, but you know, one of the greatest things though that well, Craig, that was you probably got a, you know, I you were there, so you tried because I was coming over, and as I drove to your destination, you had tried to see if you had anything with the ghost, the instructions or anything, and apparently there was no luck. You went up there and couldn't find anything, and apparently whatever it was, and you ripped your pants. And then we had lunch that day, and so
that would have been what, about 87, 88, probably.
Yeah, no, I think it was a little later than that, Judge.
Okay.
You know, I think that was probably 91, 92.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, because you know, Craig, 87, 88, I was that's when I had my magic shop. And then I got together with Lou Wise in 89, 1990, and we ran the first full page. Remember the Fun Factory ad in DC Comics, 92, going into 93.
Okay.
And Richard, have you ever seen that ad?
You know, I'm sure I have, but I'm trying to search my visual memory, and I can't remember it.
Okay, if you look any DC Comics from 1993, actually the 92, it's the 93 February issue that goes on sale December of 92. Okay. So it has a Christmas theme to it, but every DC Comics should have a full Fun Factory ad. Now, as we had said before, when we had actually Lou Wise was talking with Craig and stuff, we were saying the very first ad that they ever appeared in comic books was DC, not DC Comics, the first Superman, and that was the Johnson Smith ad. Johnson Smith had a back cover, I think, in both, Craig, in the first Superman and the actual first appearance of Superman, which is Action Comics.
Right.
And the last ad that ever ran, there was a novelty ad, was the Fun Factory ad, which was my ad in 93. Or say 92. After that, there's never been another mail order ad that, you know, deals with novelties and jokes. And prior to my ad had been 10 years. Now, Craig, you had a resurgence that we spoke about a couple of times in the 80s, where you guys started running full page ads, and then there was a resurgence of Harvey Publications, and you guys got the full page ad there in color. Any recollection of that stuff? Was there a reason that there was a resurgence that you know of?
No, you know, I don't remember that, but of course, what I do remember is, you know, that at one time in the 60s and 70s, the comic book distribution, all comics, were over 100 million a month.
Wow.
And eventually in the late 80s, 90s, that disappeared. I mean, that was a huge change in our business. we could run an ad in Marvel Comics in the 70s and maybe gross $40,000-$50,000 from one ad, which was a lot of money in the 70s, and that just all went away. And I think the reason it went away was because kids started spending their money on what the games that they played online, or what are they?
Video games.
Anyway, kids weren't buying comics anymore.
They weren't buying it anymore. Yeah.
Actually, there wasn't in the 80s, and it's true, and we've talked about this in prior shows. I think between 1982 and 84, or 81 and 82, the only thing you could really find anywhere were Archie Digest. You couldn't find anything to do in mail order or comic books. But one thing that did happen that was really big was there was a resurgence of, here's what happened when in the turn of the, like in the early 80s, wrestling started getting really big. So wrestling magazines start popping out all over the place, and new mail order companies start coming out in the line of Johnson Smith. We have Brad's Fun Shop, ATH, some other, and they were filling the pages of wrestling magazine. Johnson Smith again made a resurgence and started running full page ads in wrestling magazines. 1986, 87, not Archie Comics, Harvey Publications comes back out again, and they sold Johnson Smith an ad for 6 months. You got a full page ad for like $700 in a back cover. Johnson Smith proliferated that, took over that whole thing. And I remember at that time I was trying to scrap up some money to run my own ad, but I didn't really know Lou Weiss or anything, so I didn't have the power. Then in 92, believe it or not, that ad was an average about $5,000 for 1 month. That's the difference compared to the 70s.
Wow.
Craig, what would be the average price of an ad, a full page ad in the 70s for you guys?
It was generally it depended on which comic book publisher we were talking to, and I would negotiate it. But maybe Marvel might cost $4,000 for a full page.
Even back in the 70s?
Wow.
Even back in the 70s, right. Now, about $4,000 in the 70s is probably, I don't know, what, 15,000 plus today?
Yeah, the whole thing is with Marvel and DC is that they got so prohibitive. As I remember, well, here's the funny thing. When I was, and you're going to know the names I'm going to mention, Bernie Slotnick stayed with DC Comics probably who knows how long.
I know.
Bernie Slotnick, what's that?
I remember Bernie.
You remember? Yeah. Well, Bernie Slotnick also was the uncle of the girl from Archie. In other words, Archie comic books was related to Bernie Slotnick. He was the uncle of the daughter of the owner of Archie Comics. So I'm not sure if he was the brother of her father or her mom. But the girl that was the daughter of Archie Comics used to be very famous in the Howard Stern show, and he would call her Susan Berserkowitz. It was Susan Berkey, I believe her name. And I got to speak to Bernie many times, and I also spoke to the daughter of Archie Comics because I was trying to get my ad into the Archie publications. Now, in the early 70s, Archie's was something that a lot of boys would buy. In the 80s, it became more like a really girly kind of book, and it didn't sell to that much to the boy, to the boys and the population and stuff. So it wasn't great. But I guess as things dwindled down in the late 90s, mail order again started to disappear from publications and stuff, because now you have the internet. But then eBay became the home for a lot of those mail order companies. And to my shock, I recently did a little research on it. I think it was about last September. And there is about not one, but there's close to 36 mail order companies on eBay that sell jokes and magic. And one particular one drew my attention. I'm like, this is wild. He had like Joy Buzzer, and it would say 472 units sold. A whoopee cushion, 300 and something. The guy's making thousands. He has over 125,000 feedbacks, and all he does is sell magic tricks. I mean, not magic tricks, just jokes and novelties. And I said to myself, wow, those companies are probably actually doing more than the physical company of Johnson Smith and Honor House did it back in the day. Because I mean, that's a lot to have 100 and something thousand feedbacks and selling so many of each unit. They're probably generating a decent amount of money, I guess, with fees and stuff. So it is still, and my shock that I found out about 4 months ago, because Richard, we talked about this one time where I said that I grew up in a time when everybody said, hey, from the 1970s. It was great. We order all the famous things, monster size monsters, monster goes, all this stuff. But in Europe, the kids would say, wow, man, I wish we could order, which was true. They saw the comics, but they were not allowed to order because it was in Europe and they wouldn't ship overseas. So what happened is that Europe had a massive company like Johnson Smith. I think it's called Ellsworth. Is that correct, Chuck?
Well, you're asking me what, Eddie?
No, I was asking Chuck this one. Chuck, do you remember the name for that company?
No, I do not.
Elliston or something like that. What I'm saying is, in Europe, the magic and novelty business is very big. There's stores all over, magic shops. They just did not have the fun stuff we had, like the 7-foot submarine, the secret book safe, the monster size. We had that stuff. Europe didn't have it. In fact, Richard, this is you, Richard.
Yeah.
You remember somebody actually got a hold of me about a week ago and was asking me questions about the 7-foot. I'm sorry. You remember the 6-foot Dracula and Frankenstein that was sold in Famous Monsters?
Yes. And one of these days, I'm going to ask you a question that I hope I get a good answer for.
Well, you can ask me it right now, my friend. But the question they had asked me is, where did the one from Europe come in? Because there's a knockoff that it's the same 6-foot Frankenstein that looks like the bottom half of it is attached, and it comes in 2 pieces. The leg section from the knee down is attached, and it has a cardboard that goes along the top and bottom like a Chinese calendar.
Right.
That 6-foot Frankenstein, if you put it together to the one that came out in 1963 by the Loyal Toy Company in Long Island, that was first featured in issue number 126 of Famous Monsters, The Outer Limits on the cover, has a beautiful color back cover of the 2 monsters. And it's not the same poster. What happened was Honor House, the Captain Company, and many other companies. Johnson Smith actually did not sell the 7-foot or 6-foot monster at that time, but Honor House was selling the 6-foot Frankenstein, the Dracula, supposedly they say life-size Wolfman, but the Wolfman was really no more than just a life-size poster of his face. It was not a life-size poster in 6 feet. It's just the way they just kind of tricked kids at the time. But what happened with it is if you put that one next to the one that's in Europe, you can tell that the one from Long Island, it's all one piece, it's better quality, and it's actually drawn better. The one in Europe, what happened is during the not mid-70s, I think early 70s, there was a company in England. I had the company's name a while back. I forgot what it was, but they started producing. But the fact that England did not have the same machines that the United States had, or what I'm saying, that company that produced it didn't have the same machines. They produced it in 2 parts. So they glued the bottom part of his feet. And, they used to send it out, magazines like E-Republication, or they used to advertise it, and they would send out the 6-foot Frankenstein with a couple little rubber monsters, like a shrunken head, Caterpillar, go in the dark, and they would stick it in there for $1, and they try to improvise that. And Honor House, I believe, used to send that one out to some of its people as well. But see, Honor House, this was the way Honor House would work. If you order the 6-foot Frankenstein, and at the time they were selling the 7-foot green one, they would send you, for the ad that you saw, the original 6-foot color one, they'd send you the green Frankenstein in its place. You know what I'm saying? They never really. Now, Craig, we had mentioned this before, and I mentioned it to you, and I wish you one day can recollect that. But in 1970, Johnson Smith ran the monster-sized monsters with Boney the Skeleton and the Frankenstein in 2 of their catalogs. One of them has, I believe, the Walt Disney house outside or something like that, the Walt Disney Castle, and the other, and it has an actual full page, not full page, but half of the page of the Johnson Smith catalog has the Honor House ad, or not the Honor House, the monster-sized monster ad that Honor House took and basically ripped off the pages of the Johnson Smith catalog, added a coffin where it would be the order form looks like a coffin when you look at it really good. And they added that, and they ran away with it. And Johnson Smith never repeated the ad after that. So whatever the reason, Honor House just took it over. And I know, Craig, you mentioned you can remember.
Yes.
Do you recall any of that stuff?
Oh, I absolutely do. I know that ad now. Those two posters are something that I've always wanted, but one of these days I'm going to talk to you about a Dracula to start. But you have a couple on hand, right?
Of course I do.
Okay,
I sell them.
I am a Dracula guy. All that stuff. It's interesting. The stuff from the comics and the stuff from Famous Monsters. Was so OCD even as a child. I wouldn't cut the coupons out. So the thing that was the savior for me later in my childhood, my mother worked at a company and they had a Xerox machine. So
so you were able to make copies like I did, huh?
Make copies of the coupons and then mail away and order stuff. And but Captain Company, I didn't order a lot of stuff from them because they were so slow, and I didn't have any patience even as a kid. I mean, it's terrible now. I have no patience at all.
Let me ask you this question. And what was the question you wanted to ask me about the monsters? We have about.
I want one of those I want to talk to you about getting one of those Draculas at some point.
Oh, of course.
That's what I want.
We'll definitely talk about it after the show. We'll definitely talk about that. What I was going to say to you is, okay, guys, it's been great having you all on board here. We have about 1 minute left. Craig, thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
My pleasure.
I wanted to have Lou Wise, who was the owner of the original Fun Factory, and Craig, so they can discuss a few things. Maybe they talk to each other, and it'll be pretty interesting, I think.
Ask him if he still needs to hire me.
If you still need, we'll ask him that. And the best part is that the only thing is I would have to do it a little later in the day because Lou Wise runs a big giant steel company, and I don't think he's home before like 7 or 8. So I might do a special. And Richard, I would love for you to be on.
Oh, listen, if I possibly can, I love being on. It's great.
Okay, so having said that, guys, Chuck, Cheri, thank you as always, and God bless.
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
And have a great day.
Okay.